Hey there. I hope that you're doing very, very well today. And I'd like to invite you to have a look at this map here of the Austro-Hungarian Empire. This is from the late 19th century, I think. And I thought it'd be quite interesting to look at the different regions and the languages that were spoken there. You might know that Austria-Hungary was a bit of an unusual empire in the 19th century because there were many, many different peoples living there and many, many different languages being spoken in the different regions. It consisted of two parts basically. For one, we have the Austrian side, so it would be over here. All these bits and pieces that are colored in yellow, here across the north down to Bukovina, along the border to Russia and Poland, and the different parts of Germany. And this part would have been called Cisleitanian. The part that's not quite so neatly colored, basically the Hungarian part, all the way around here. This would be Transleitanian, so Austria and Hungary. And it means on this side and on the other side of the Leita, which is a river that we're seeing here. It says Leita, very small. I can't quite find where the Leita flows. I think it should be somewhere down here. It's the border between Austria and Hungary today, if I'm not mistaken. But I could only find this little word here. But those were quite common expressions. Cisleitanian and Transleitanian. So, I'd say let's start with the parts that I know best. And that will be here. We have the two historic regions where the name Austria comes from, which would be Upper Austria and Lower Austria. So that would be here. Along the Danube, you would have Vienna. Then we have Styria, which on this map looks a lot bigger than what I'm used to. We have Salzburg, which is quite well known, I think, internationally. And Salzburg actually belonged to the church for a very long time, so it wasn't part of the Austrian Empire. Then here we have Tyrol, which also looks a lot larger than it is today. For one, because it included this part here, which is Vorarlberg. Today that's its own Bundesland, its own federal state within Austria. But at the time I think it still belonged to Tyrol. And the other reason is that the Austrian-Italian border today runs along this part here. So Südtirol, the southern part of the Tyrol is today part of Italy. And in fact, I think the language border runs somewhere here in the middle. So the southern part with Trient has always been Italian in terms of language, and only the northern part would have been German speaking. Then here we have Krain, and here was the access to the sea, Istrian with Trieste, with some little islands here in the Adriatic Sea. Oh, I think this is already part of Croatia. So these two would have been part of Istrian. In the north we have Bohemia, here in dark green. We have Moravia. So where's that border over here? Like this. We have Schlesien. Let's say Schlesien. So it looks like there's a border here, but can't quite see where that is here. Maybe down there in the middle. Then here in the eastern part, from Krakow onwards, we have a region that you might expect in Spain going by the name Galicia. But that's just a coincidence that it has the same name as this region in Spain. And in the very east there's the Bukovina. Today I think half of it is part of Romania, the southern part, and the northern part belongs to the Ukraine today. So this was one of the border regions to the Ottoman Empire. And for Transleithanien, we don't really have these individual regions here on this map. See, we have here Croatia, Dalmatian, Slavonian. So these would be historic regions belonging to Croatia. Here we have Siebenbürgen, in English known as Transylvania. And then I think this part here will largely be part of Hungary today. So quite a large area. Oh, and then of course, we can't forget about Bosnia, which became part of the Austria-Hungarian Empire quite late, and had a bit of a different status as far as I know. So it was a little bit more outside of the empire than the other regions. Okay, how about we have a look at the languages? Because there's quite many. So, all in all, there were, let's see what it says here, I think it said 12 languages. All in all, they counted 11 large populations and later even 12. when Czechs and Slovaks were counted separately. Let's see. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 languages that are listed here. But I think it's fair to say that people spoke a whole lot more. But let's go through these for now. So first of all we have German. That was the predominant language in the regions that are part of Austria today, as well as here in the north, what would become known as Sudetendeutsche, here in this corner. And then interestingly, you have a lot of smaller regions with some German-speaking populations. They were not all from this area here, partly they came from a lot further away, from Switzerland, for example. They were often known as Schwaben or Sachsen, so they would have been even further away in Germany. But I don't know if they really came from there, or whether that was simply the name that was established for them. And especially here in this region, there was quite a sizable German-speaking population. And you still see that today in some of the names of the cities, like Hermannstadt. So that would be in Romania today. Then here, this dark blue, purple, we have Italian. And it says Ladinisch. I'm not sure what that would be in English. But those people would live here, Ladina. So I'm guessing it's a type of Italian dialect, probably. So that would be to the south of what is Austria today. And of course here with Trieste and Istrian. Then in this lighter purple we have Romanian. There would be this large region here, south of the Bukovina, east of Hungary, and some mixed areas here. Then yellow, you might have guessed that's Hungarian. So that's not just in the area of the state that's become Hungary today, but there's also some minorities further east. Just like with the German-speaking populations. Alright. Then we have dark green in Bohemia and Moravia. So here in the north. This light green is Slovakian. Right, that would be over here. So this is the region that would then become Czechoslovakia and then split into two different states, the Czech Republic and Slovakia. In blue we have Polish. Here, part of the Kingdom of Galicia. Then this is Ruthenian, which is basically Ukrainian. This is, I think, just an antiquated name for Ukrainian. Here, which would also be part of Galicia. Then we have a language that's also been split into 3 languages by now. Serbo-Croatian starts here in this mixed area, and then this whole region to the south with Croatia. I think this is wrong, this should say Slavonia, not Slovenia. Bosnia and Herzegovina and Dalmatia. And lastly, in beige we have Slovenian. Here to the south in the Duchy of Krain. Alright. But of course that's not all. There were also people who, for example, would speak Yiddish, both in the Cis-Litanian and Trans-Litanian part. But they're not listed separately here because partly we don't quite know where they lived. And the reason for that is that there was a census in 1910, but in the Austrian part, people weren't asked for their native language, but for the language that they would use more commonly. So a lot of people who would speak Yiddish would say they were speaking German because that's the language they would use more often. And they were counted as German speakers. So, especially in Vienna, you probably had quite a sizable population, or a lot of other languages being spoken here too. You also had some other minority languages, like here in the Bukovina you had a small Armenian population who might have spoken Greek, if I'm not wrong. Could be wrong. You had some small groups like these here, Lipovana. This is a group I'd never heard of before. It says here that they were very, very conservative and that they were living together. They refused to dance, to drink alcohol, or to smoke. They had a very, very low crime rate. So in 9 years, from 1862 to 1871, there was a single crime that could be attributed to this group. So, very honest people. But it's just a small group that lived here. What's interesting is, I can show that to you on a different map. Let's see what that would be. Right here. So this is a little older, a bit earlier in the 19th century. But what you can see here is that this is a military border. And the area that's affected by this border is quite large. So here in the south you have the Ottoman Empire, and the Ottoman and the Habsburg Empire weren't the best of friends, as you might know. So the Habsburgs used these areas that we have in purple here as a protective area too. And they also wanted to make sure not to lose any of the areas close to the borders, such as Bukovina, or I think here in this area, there's a region called Vojvodina with a similar history, where the Habsburgs decided to send people there to live there, so they would give some of the land away and make sure that people would settle down here to protect the land from any invading forces. And that's why there's such a mixed population in regions like the Bukovina or here in Transylvania. Like I said, there are places like Hermannstadt, Klausenburg, Kronstadt, so typically German names that, as far as I know, exist to this day. Alright, but let's go back to the other map. And let's see if we can get a bit of an idea of the percentage of each of these languages. So part of the census was carried out separately in Austria-Hungary, but we do know the totals too. German was spoken by about 23% of the population, so it was the most common language at the time. The second most common one was Hungarian with 20%. Then Czech with 13%. Polish here in the north with 10%. Ruthenian with 8%. So you can see that this area was probably not very densely populated compared to, say, the Austrian regions. It's just as large, but only 8% of the population were speaking Ruthenian. So of course, the two languages also had a very different status. Then Romanian we have about 6% of the time. Same goes for Croatian. 4% were speaking Slovak. 4% Serbian. 3% Slovenian. 3% Italian. Now I know I said that Serbian and Croatian were counted as one at the time, so don't ask me how they arrived at two different numbers, but they did. Alright, so as you can imagine, it was a very different empire to govern. Probably quite complicated. If you compare it to the EU today and the many translators and interpreters that you have, I don't think it existed in the same way at the time. But until 1918, this large empire did persist and only fall apart very slowly. Alright. So I think that's it for today. Let's just close this up. I hope you found this interesting. And if you'd like to see more similar videos, something historical about languages, let me know and I'll be happy to make those. But for today, I say thank you for watching and I'll see you again soon. Goodbye.